to 11, actually on the air in our hometown of Pittsfield, Massachusetts, on WBEC. Mm-hmm. And we sold commercials, and it was just like a real radio program. We paid miniature salaries to people in the company and sold stock. So it was also an opportunity to learn about how business worked in America. It was a great experience that turned into a radio career for me.
Wow. It's interesting. I love radio. I've been doing my show for 6 years, and with radio, you can do so many different things, I think, Yeah.
I've always loved radio because what happens when you're listening is quite a bit different than if you're sitting watching a TV. If you're watching TV, it's all kind of there for you. When you're listening to the radio, it happens in your mind and your imagination. It really is theater of the mind. And it's a great way to involve people with great music or with information, or even with talk shows so that they can come on and give their opinion on things. For me, it's always been the best. That's why I've been in it all these years.
Yeah. What is the most challenging or most difficult part being in radio and entertainment business?
Well, radio really has evolved into, I don't know if I want to say evolved. Maybe it's become part of something much bigger rather than to have evolved into something on its own. I don't know if you're old enough to remember the dial phones, when phones had a rotary dial.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they had push buttons. Mm-hmm. And now everybody has a phone on them, which is pretty much a phone, a camera, directions if you need to go somewhere instantly via the internet. Radio kind of has taken its place as one of the items on that landscape. When I started in radio, there were 2 stations in our town, and everybody knew everybody's name who was on the air, and usually had listened that day. So the level of involvement was really a lot higher because there weren't so many choices. Now if you go to the mall or you go somewhere, or even in traffic, you see people texting on their phones, which is that's not broadcasting, that's narrowcasting, that's person to person.
Yeah.
Broadcasting is, of course, as you know, when you talk to a large audience. But they didn't have that capability back when I started, and they didn't really have it until maybe 10 years ago. So broadcasting was a great way to reach the masses and give them their news and their weather and the information that they needed, and to entertain them with music and talk. And that all really has pretty much been absorbed into the device that a person, would call their phone or their camera, or whatever you would consider your communications device to be. I know on mine I get Sirius XM. I get the 2 stations I work for, and and neither of them have a transmitter, and neither really broadcasts in a conventional sense that you would think.
Yeah. What is your radio show about? What do you do with your show?
I do an oldies, the way back playback. It's on YourKawarthaOldies.com. YourKawarthaOldies.com. It airs Sunday at noon Eastern. It's a 2-hour show. One of the first hour is from the 60s. The second hour is from the 70s, and I host the music show on YourKawarthaOldies.com, the way back playback. I've been doing that now for 5 years. And the other one I do is on Hot 92.3, The Beat, here in Los Angeles. And that's the URL for that. That airs Friday nights from 9 to midnight Pacific time. So depending on your time zone, you have to do a little bit of math to figure out when it's on.
Yeah.
But, the interesting thing is they're both heard worldwide. Everywhere the internet is, those programs go. And that is almost mind-boggling to someone who started 50 years ago and broadcast to a small town via a small radio station. Although we did reach everybody in the town, it didn't really go much further than, maybe 10 miles out of town. And then you had to go to another radio station. That's how many people got started in radio, and that's why there were so many people who are in the business.
Yeah, it's amazing that, the internet these days can do. It gets your show out there more.
Yeah, and it's astonishing how it's done. We don't go into a building anymore where there's a physical radio station with a physical staff that would have to man it 24 hours. It's done via computer. A program comes up on the screen, and you select where you want to talk, and you just indicate that that's where you want to put in a voice part. You record it, and you can play it back and hear it exactly the way it will play on the air. And if that's okay, you'll okay it, and it becomes part of the show. So, you don't even have to leave home today, really, to do a radio show.
Yeah, you can have your own home studio and do it.
Yeah, if you got a nice home studio, and, I've done voiceover work in Los Angeles for many years, but my first love has always been radio. So it's such a nice treat to be able to be on the air and to turn it on and listen to it and hear a good program. And you really don't have to go anywhere or spend any time traveling. None of that factors into it anymore. It's all done from one location, and it's all played back on one computer from that location.
Yeah. My last question is, do you have any advice for people who want to get in radio?
Yeah, just stick with. If you really enjoy radio, and I'm thinking you do, stay with it. Keep doing it. Try to make it grow. Maybe try to get 2 shows going. Find out where you might be able to, talk to somebody who might have an interest in the particular type of show that you do. I do music shows because I was a music disc jockey. For many, many years in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and New Haven, Connecticut, and Hartford, and Rochester, New York. I was the morning man on a big 50,000-watt station. And I went to Chicago in 1980, and I was on the first air staff to ever uplink from Satellite Music Network. We were feeding affiliates all over America, North America, and that was back in 1980. Then I went into Chicago radio and worked for 3 or 4 of the stations there. So, it's you have to keep moving in the business, and you can't get discouraged by people who aren't, as enthusiastic about it as you are. You can't lose what we like to call the bite. You have to really want to be doing it. And if you are motivated and you keep doing something every day or, once in a while that keeps you going in the direction that you'd like to go, I think you're going to find you get there.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to, if the passion's strong, you have to keep doing it and be persistent and just keep doing what you love to do.
Well, there's an old saying: you could take radio out of the boy, but you can't take the boy out of radio.
Yeah.
And I've always found that to be quite true. We celebrated a 50th anniversary show on Your Kawartha Oldies last year. A fellow who has been in radio as long as I have, because we were both at that assembly way back in 1967 at school, and we both got picked for the station. I went on to be a disc jockey and a voice talent in Los Angeles, and now I'm a disc jockey again and a voice talent in Los Angeles. And he went on to actually become a manager for Clear Channel. He had a big career.
Yeah.
But, and that has changed too. They're really not, they don't really need a staff anymore. It's pretty much been automated. So it's taken a lot of people and sidelined them. Unless you do an actual show like you do or like I do, which has to be done by a person. That's the human element is something that, you just can't get around it. If you're going to have a good radio show, you have to have somebody on there hosting it who wants to do it and is going to do a good job. A lot like your interview. You have to have someone who's going to follow up and chase the people down and make sure that you're connecting with them. and that you're getting the type of answers that you want from them. And that really is important. It shows a lot of initiative when you do what you did by contacting me and asking for an interview. I did the same thing for a fellow over in England. It was about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. He was a record guy. He was part of one of the groups that were a Beatle-era group, and they redid the record that they released back in, I think, 1965. And he was looking for people to play it and stations to pick it up. And I thought, well, geez, this is an excellent time to maybe revisit that time, to actually talk to somebody who would have been out there doing this work when it was just the most exciting thing on the planet, which it really was back in the 60s. Interesting fellow and a great record, and I'm really glad that he contacted me too.
Yeah. You meet a lot of amazing people in this business. You really do.
Yeah. That's part of what I've always found really fascinating about radio, and I don't know if you've had the experience with what you've done so far. You meet a lot of people who are just different, kind of offbeat people, and you put a group of them together, and it just turns out to be a wonderful combination of people who are not alike. They're not a bunch of people wearing a tie and sitting at a desk and saying the same thing. Everybody has a slightly different take on it, and that makes the whole presentation way more interesting, I think.
Yeah, it really does. Well, Mr. Trembley, it's been a pleasure talking to you and hearing about your career and your radio show and your advice to me and my listeners. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Trey. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And that was radio host and disc jockey Mr. Paul Trembley. Thank you for listening to us tonight, and God bless you all. Thank you very much, and good night.